why is it that this next weekend, why is it that Caleb Plant is fighting Caleb Truax for his IBF super middleweight title? I saw that fight got signed and I was like, in Plant, his last three fights, he's fought some weird guys, man. For a guy with a title with his skill level, like the level of opposition for him in his last handful of fights since Uzcategui is very unimpressive. So I was like, why is it that he's taking this fight? He's had these tune-up fights, and the reality is that this is also a mandatory. He also has to take this fight if he wants to keep this belt. He's in the same position as Canelo. So I'm going to do the same thing for this fight. I'm going to tell you why Caleb Truax is the mandatory. And it's a mixture of these rankings are ridiculous and this is long overdue, And I'm going to take it all the way back. I'm going to give you some real context here. So to take it all the way back, on May 23rd, 2015, right, James DeGale beats Andre Durrell for the IBF Super Middleweight Championship. Holds on to that belt for a few years. And then in December of 2017, loses that belt to Caleb Truax by decision. They have a rematch, I believe, in April of 2018. And DeGale wins his title back. But then in July of 2018, vacates that belt. Right? And so instead of it going vacant and having two guys fight for it, the IBF already had what's called an interim champion. Now, I don't really know what the fuck that means. You're either the champion or you're not. But now these belt organizations have these smaller belts, these sub-belts, that if you get them, they entitle you to a world title opportunity. It's ridiculous. So, at the time, July 2018, Jose Uzcategui, difficult name, was the interim IBF champion and was promoted to being the full champion. And then in January of 2019, Caleb Plant beats Jose Uzcategui. Currently, for whatever reason, the top two rankings of the IBF are vacant. And Caleb Truax is the number 3, making him Caleb Plant's mandatory. And part of why he's Caleb Plant's mandatory was because I believe he was entitled to a third fight with James DeGale and never got it. And he never got it because I believe Plant was ranked higher than him and so was entitled to a fight against Uzcategui and da-da-da-da. But the bottom line is, one, this is a stupid fight, but in a sense it's also overdue. It's not a fight people are particularly interested in seeing, but on some level, the IBF has promised Truax that he was going to get a third fight with DeGale. I believe he never got that fight because DeGale vacates the belt. And so his status as far as the IBF ranking has probably been in limbo for months now, for years, right? So on one hand, if you're Caleb Truax, you're like, about fucking time. And then on the other hand, if you're the fans and you don't know all this shit, you're looking at it and you're like, why are these world champions fighting these guys that I don't know? Why aren't they fighting each other right now? Why aren't they fighting each other as soon as it's possible when it's the most viable? And this is why. It's because these belts have inserted themselves and they've sort of made it seem like they're a necessity for the function of the sport. And in some way they are, because it does have meaning to have all four, and in some ways it doesn't mean shit. Because you can get to be worth a certain amount of money and you don't need them. People want to see you fight regardless of what belts you have. The belts are like a stepping stone. But, they're holding on to, I believe they're holding on to their relevance for dear life. They'll do anything they can to insert themselves in as many fights as possible. That's why you see the Diamond Champion and the Golden Champion and the Interim Champion and the Super Champion. Because the more belts they can have, the more sanctioning fees come in. And the more times they can get the title to change hands and more different challengers. It's a very messy way that they've inserted themselves into the sport. And really, I think very frequently prevent the best fights from happening. Because guys want to hold on to their belts. You know, you work your whole life to win this championship, and you want to keep it. You want to be able to have that leverage, and you want to be able to say, I won all 4 belts, because regardless of how fucked up all of it is, there's no fighter that doesn't want to win a championship belt and win all 4 of them. You know, that's in the 4-belt era. That's you know, that's the dream. But again, this all leaves the questions left, you know, unanswered. Like, why are the top 2 IBF spots vacant? What does that even mean? Right? If you're going to just have them vacant, like, why not just shift everything up? Why isn't Truax number 1 now? You know, what is that system? Why is that how we're doing this at the highest level of boxing? You know, why didn't Uzcategui have to fight Truax? If Truax is entitled to that shot, you know, even if we, the fans, don't think he's worthy of it, if this organization is saying you're entitled to this, get it out of the way. You know, why are some people forced to do it and others are not? You know, I think Uzcategui should have had to fight Truax the moment DeGale vacates the belt. You know what I'm saying? And the reality is, why is it that Caleb Plant has fought twice since he fought Uzcategui 2 years ago, you know, against basically guys that have absolutely no chance against him? You know, why wasn't he made to fight Truax immediately after he won the belt from Uzcategui? You know, he had a voluntary defense against Mike Lee. Apparently, that last opponent he had, Feigenbutz, that guy was a mandatory. I don't know why he would be a mandatory. But then what are these vacant spots? What, the whole thing is such a mess to me. And it feels like it hurts the fighters the most. It hurts the fighters and the fans the most, because we're all just left to be like, well, who the fuck? We don't know what's happening. You know, we just want to watch boxing on TV. You know, and I know about this shit because I've been watching it for so long, and I read about it, and I feel like if people understood how ridiculous this business is, they'd really want it to operate differently. You know what I mean? So that's my thoughts on you know, these world champions being forced to take on these mandatories that are not particularly compelling fights, and at the same time, these belt organizations holding these contenders, you know, hostage a little bit and promising them something that isn't necessarily there, you know?